No chains, no threats, no bruises, and yet your will is no longer yours. That's how modern control works. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it doesn't hit, it rewards, it doesn't imprison you, it teaches you to imprison yourself and smile while doing it. The most dangerous form of slavery is the one that wears your name. You think you're in control because you choose. But what if every choice you make is a reaction to fear? Fear of not being liked, fear of missing out, fear of disappointing someone who isn't even in the room. You choose what is acceptable, what is safe, what is normal. And in doing so, you hand over the reins of your life, one silent, exhausted yes at a time. That was the first warning. You wake up and follow a routine that never asked what you believe. You scroll through hundreds of opinions before you've even heard your own thoughts. You go to work, meet expectations, nod at ideas you disagree with, and laugh at jokes that rot your soul, just to be agreeable. But the collapse doesn't come all at once. It comes gradually, like a slow leak in the soul. One boundary ignored, one gut feeling silenced, one dream shelved for now. By the time you realize you've been compromised, you're already living a life that looks successful, but feels counterfeit. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But what if those thoughts were never yours to begin with? Look closer. Your opinions, your desires, your goals, are they rooted in reflection or reaction? Have you ever wanted something, not because you wanted it, but because someone told you it's what success looks like? The truth is, you weren't conquered by force. You were reprogrammed by repetition. You don't need a jailer to trap you. You need enough noise, enough pressure, enough scripted validation until you forget that silence used to be yours, until your voice sounds foreign, until your dreams seem dangerous, until your life is so optimized it no longer breathes. This isn't just psychological fatigue, it's existential hijacking, and it only gets worse when you believe it's just stress. So ask yourself, brutally, when was the last time you heard your own voice without interference? Because if you can't answer that, you've already lost the first war, the war for your selfhood. There's a moment most people never talk about. It doesn't make it into TED Talks or memoirs. It happens in silence, behind smiles, achievements, and "I'm fine" texts. It's the moment you realize you've spent years building a life that doesn't belong to you. You dressed up every morning not to express yourself, but to be presentable. You didn't speak your truth. You managed perception. You didn't choose that career. You inherited it from a system that rewards compliance, not clarity. It starts early. Someone praises you when you follow rules. Someone frowns when you say, "I don't like this." You learn, fast, that acceptance is conditional, and without noticing, you begin crafting a version of yourself that keeps you safe, but never real. That safety becomes a prison, and that performance becomes identity. You become so good at fitting in, you forget how it feels to simply be. Second warning, you talk about dreams you no longer believe in. You say things like, "maybe next year," knowing you said that last year. You rehearse passion, you mimic ambition, but deep down, it feels like you're just keeping up with a script. You feel tired, but it's not the tiredness that rest fixes. It's a tiredness of being someone else, over and over, for people who wouldn't recognize you without the mask. Epictetus warned, Only the educated are free. He didn't mean degrees. He meant those who've been trained to see the difference between what is theirs and what has been injected into them. And here's where it gets dangerous. The longer you stay in character, the more the world applauds. Not you, but the role. You get rewarded for not questioning. You get promoted for playing along. You get loved for being predictable. And each time that happens, you fall deeper into the illusion that this is who you're meant to be. Until one day you stand in a room full of people and feel completely alone, because they don't know you. They know the role you've been paid to play. So you laugh, you perform, you function. But inside, something is decomposing. That's not burnout. That's soul rot. If you've ever sat in silence and felt like you were vanishing, not from the world, but from yourself, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are waking up. The question is, will you keep performing or start remembering? The first sign is subtle and cruel. You feel tired, but it's not from work or from effort or from any clear pain. It's the kind of tired that sinks into your bones even when your calendar is clear and your life looks fine. It's the exhaustion of living by someone else's script. You wake up with the weight of 1,000 silent expectations, how you should speak, how you should look, how you should think. And even when you follow the rules, especially when you follow the rules, you feel empty. That's because your nervous system wasn't designed to perform endlessly. It was designed to respond to truth. And when your truth has been replaced by performance, the body begins to break before the lie is ever spoken. This kind of fatigue doesn't go away with a weekend off. It only lifts when you begin to reclaim your inner authority, the right to say, "This isn't me. I don't want this. I don't believe this." But here's the second sign, more chilling than the first. You hear your own voice, and it doesn't sound like you anymore. You catch yourself mid-sentence and wonder, who taught me to talk like this? You laugh politely at things that disgust you. You compliment to avoid conflict. You apologize before you even feel wrong. It's not just the loss of opinion, it's the erosion of tone, of pause, of the small signals that once told others, "I am here. This is what I see. This is how I feel." Now even your tone has been outsourced. Seneca once wrote, "If you live according to nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich." The poverty he spoke of wasn't financial. It was spiritual poverty, a slow starvation of self. Each time you betray your truth to avoid discomfort, you lose a fragment of your own voice. And one day, when something real finally demands to be said, you'll realize you don't know how to say it anymore. You'll stand in a room full of people and feel like an intruder in your own life. Because the voice they hear isn't yours. It's the one you've rehearsed to survive. So ask yourself, when was the last time you said something that scared you? Because it was true. If you can't remember, you're not tired. You're being erased. Here's the third sign, and it hurts in places you can't explain. You despise the version of yourself you've become, but you smile anyway. You put on the right clothes, you say the right things, you show up, get through the day, and do what's expected. But behind your eyes, something screams. A dull, persistent scream that no one can hear, because the world sees you functioning, so they assume you're fine. But you're not fine. You're exhausted from playing a character you didn't audition for. And the most brutal part, you can't remember when the performance began. Maybe it started with a compromise, a small one. A moment when you said yes just to keep the peace, or I'm okay when you weren't. But over time, those tiny betrayals of self became identity. You didn't just act out a role, you became it. And now, even when you want to stop, you don't know how. Because the lines are memorized, the stage is always lit, and everyone applauds the lie. Here's the fourth sign, and it's even more dangerous. You don't make choices. You ask for permission. You wait for someone to approve your dreams. You wait for the right moment. You wait to be told it's okay to leave, to rest, to change, to be selfish, to be honest. But that moment never comes, because the system that taught you to wait was never designed to let you go. You've been conditioned to believe that freedom is granted, not taken. And so you hesitate. Not because you don't want to move, but because somewhere deep inside, you still believe you need someone's blessing. This is not humility. This is psychological captivity. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, warned, "Man conquers the world by conquering himself." But you can't conquer what you've outsourced. If you can't act without validation, you're not free, you're rented. So the applause continues, the mask stays on, and the real you sits backstage, waiting. But let me ask you, how long will you keep asking for permission to exist? Because no one's going to hand it to you. Not your parents, not your boss, not society. The door was never locked. You were just trained not to touch the handle. The fifth sign is poison disguised as responsibility. You feel guilty, constantly. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've been programmed to feel wrong, for simply existing outside the script. You feel guilty for resting, for saying no, for not responding fast enough, for not being productive every hour of the day. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that your worth is measured in how much you give, how little you ask, how seamlessly you absorb the burdens of others. So now you apologize for being tired, for having boundaries, for not living a life that someone else envisioned for you. You carry shame like a second skin, not because you failed, but because you dared to feel differently than what was expected. This isn't morality. This is domestication. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But you've been forced to feel guilty for actions that were both right and true, simply because they made someone else uncomfortable. You were gaslit by systems that called your conscience selfish, and you believed them. That was the fifth sign. Now, here's the sixth, and it's the cruelest. You dream of another life, but always wake up in the same cage. You imagine walking away, quitting that job, leaving that relationship, burning the script. But when the morning comes, you shrink. You convince yourself it was just a fantasy. You tell yourself, it's too late. It's not that bad. I'll wait a little longer. And that little longer becomes years, then decades, then death. You weren't paralyzed by logic. You were bound by emotional conditioning. You were taught to mistake familiarity for safety, even if that familiarity is killing you. Your mind visits freedom while your body repeats captivity, day after day, routine after routine. You don't need a leash. You need only a story. That's just how life is. That story is the real prison. And here's the brutal truth. Your life doesn't change when you get tired. It changes when you get sick of lying to yourself. So the question is, How many more dreams will you ignore before you admit the cage isn't locked? It's just decorated. You weren't born to decorate your cell. You were born to break it. Here's the seventh sign, the one that hides in plain sight, the one most people dismiss as just background noise. You fear silence, not the silence of an empty room, but the silence inside yourself, the space where there are no screens, no voices, no tasks, just you, unfiltered. It's in that space where the truth lives, and that's exactly why you avoid it. You fill your day with noise, podcasts, notifications, conversations. Even your moments of rest are filled with curated distractions, as if the real danger is stillness. Because in stillness, you hear the question you've been running from for years. Whose life is this? You hear your regrets, the moments you said yes to stay liked, the dreams you postponed into oblivion, the people you tolerated because loneliness felt worse than betrayal. You hear your voice, raw, angry, scared. You hear the version of yourself that was never allowed to speak, and it terrifies you. So instead, you scroll, you talk over it. You perform gratitude, ambition, hustle. You cover the wound with productivity. But the silence waits, and it never forgets. Carl Jung once warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. He wasn't talking about criminals. He was talking about people like us. People who've learned to look successful while dying inside. You think you need motivation, but what you really need is to stop hiding from yourself. The Stoics didn't preach comfort. They preached confrontation, especially with the self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But today, the soul is the noisiest place of all, because we filled it with lies, and silence is where they echo loudest. If you've ever felt a sudden wave of sadness while sitting alone with nothing to do, that's not depression. That's your true self, trying to reintroduce itself. You fear it because you think it will judge you. But it's not here to punish you, it's here to retrieve you. So stop running. Turn off the noise, stand in the silence, and ask the only question that matters: what part of me did I abandon to survive this life? Because if you don't ask it now, you'll spend the rest of your life talking, just to drown out the voice that could have saved you. At this point, you've probably felt it. That pressure, that ache, that slow burn panic beneath your routines. The sense that you're living, yet not inhabiting your life. You function, you respond, you play along, but something essential has gone missing. And here's the Stoic truth, sharp and cold. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. This isn't philosophy. This is survival. Because what you don't master will become your master. Your job, your lover, your image, your past, your need to be liked, your fear of being alone. If you don't own it, it will own you. And don't fool yourself. Most people never notice the transfer of power. It doesn't happen with force. It happens through neglect. Neglecting your intuition. Neglecting the pause before you say yes. Neglecting the voice that says, "This isn't you." Stoicism was never meant to make life easier. It was meant to make ownership unavoidable. Because the Stoics knew freedom is not granted, it's seized. It's taken back from every place you lost yourself. And that reclamation starts with something brutal: self-confrontation. You must name the roles you never agreed to. You must question the script you were handed. You must face the mirror, not to adjust your image, but to ask, who decided this version of me was acceptable? Carl Jung didn't write Stoic texts, but he understood the battlefield. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's what this is. Not just fatigue, not just confusion. It's the war between your true self and your programmed self. And no one can fight it for you. You don't win this war by being more positive. You win it by becoming ruthlessly honest about what you want, what you've tolerated, and what must die so that you can live. So stop waiting for clarity. You won't get it from books. You won't get it from validation. You won't even get it from this video. You get it the moment you stop outsourcing your soul. Stand in the mirror and ask yourself aloud, is this life mine? If the answer feels like a lie, you already know what must come next. Because the truth is, no one's coming to rescue you. But if you can hear this voice, if something inside you is still awake, then your real self is still alive, and it wants out. You've seen the signs, you've heard the silence, and now the question isn't whether you're living someone else's life. The question is, are you willing to stop? Because the exit doesn't come with applause. It comes with grief, with withdrawal, with peeling away layers that kept you safe but made you small. And no, most people around you won't understand. They've accepted the performance as reality. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're cold, selfish, unstable. That's fine. Let them grieve the version of you that existed only to make them comfortable. Because here's the truth, most people never say out loud. You don't have to explain your awakening. You just have to honor it. So, how do you take back what was stolen? You start small, with silence. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as extraction. A deliberate withdrawal from roles that don't serve you. A refusal to explain yourself to those who never really listened. A quiet, sovereign step away from noise, comparison, and validation. You stop performing, even if your hands shake, even if your voice cracks, even if it terrifies everyone in the room. You let go of dreams that weren't yours. You walk away from circles that only celebrated your obedience. You stop seeking permission to feel, to rest, to want something different. And you make one decision, just one, that's not based on fear. Seneca warned us, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. This is the moment you name your port, not the one you inherited, not the one you were rewarded for, the one that burns quietly inside your ribs every time you say, this isn't it. And yes, this decision will cost you. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you certainty. It will cost you relationships built on your silence. But what you gain is your life. Not a better life. Not a prettier life. A real one. With your voice, your values, your vision. A life that doesn't require performance to be meaningful. You don't have to burn it all down in one day. But you do have to take one honest step without waiting for permission. And if you still wonder what that step looks like, it's this. Say no. Delete the app. End the call. Leave the table. Be misunderstood. Be alone. Be awake. Because once you take back the right to be you, even in silence, even in conflict, the world can no longer program you. And that is what real freedom feels like. Now you know, not because someone handed you the truth, but because something inside you finally stopped lying. You've seen the signs, you've traced the silence, you've felt the rot beneath the routines, and there's no more pretending that this life, the one dressed in expectation and guilt, is enough. Here's the final truth. No one is coming to give you back what you lost. Not the system, not your parents, not your partner, not your God, not your one day. Because this isn't about rescue. It's about responsibility. Responsibility for every moment you said yes when your soul screamed no. Responsibility for the freedom you traded for comfort, for applause, for peace treaties with people who only loved the role you played. But now, you've woken up. And once you're awake, you only have two options: reclaim your life or return to the performance. There is no third path. There is no gentle middle. Every time you silence your truth to stay agreeable, you dig the grave a little deeper. Every time you shrink yourself to fit a role, you reinforce the lie that your real self isn't safe. But the Stoics didn't suffer fools, especially not the fool within. They knew the cost of self-betrayal is always greater than the price of conflict. So, if you want to live, really live, you don't wait for certainty. You act, even if it's quiet, even if it's hard, even if you lose people, because if the life you're clinging to requires your silence, it's not worth keeping. You already know what needs to go, what needs to end, what can't follow you into the next version of who you're becoming. So, let it go. Not for drama, not for rebellion, but for alignment, for sovereignty, for peace that doesn't depend on permission. And if this voice hit something in you, if some part of you whispered, "This is me," then don't scroll away. Don't drown it out. Don't sleep it off. Because that whisper, that's your original self, the one that remembers who you were before they rewrote you. And it's time to listen. You know what to do. You've always known. Subscribe only if you want psychological weapons, not comfort. We don't do advice here. We do freedom.